The fluorescent lights of LAX Terminal B seemed to amplify every whisper, every judgment. Avery Reed, usually vibrant at 32, felt invisible in her oversized faded coat and worn backpack. She clutched an economy ticket to Portland, her final, desperate step toward starting over. Her hands were cold despite the coat. She had $800 from her last 2 cleaning jobs and one fragile hope, that her past wouldn't follow her. Across the sprawling terminal, tucked into an exclusive lounge behind tinted glass, sat a man who embodied everything Avery had lost. Ethan Vance, 35, wore a charcoal suit worth more than her entire moving budget. He was the kind of man whose presence commanded attention without asking for it. A notorious figure in Seattle's tech world, known for ruthless efficiency and a face that rarely smiled. He was waiting for his private jet, scrolling through a merger proposal on his tablet, noise-canceling headphones blocking out the world. Avery was at the check-in desk, fumbling with her documents, when a voice shattered the terminal's calm. "Avery, for God's sake, what is that hideous bag? Are you actually flying commercial?" Her spine went rigid. She didn't need to turn around to recognize the voice. Robert Sterling, her ex-husband. Despite their divorce being finalized 6 months ago, after 3 brutal years of legal warfare, he still found ways to strip away her dignity. Robert, dressed in designer casual wear that screamed entitlement, looked like a magazine ad for everything wrong with wealth. Beside him stood Tiffany, his new fiancée, a young woman wearing a diamond that could fund Avery's entire fresh start. Robert was a partner at Sterling and Vance Investments, the same firm where Avery had once been a promising marketing analyst, until Robert decided her career was inconvenient to his image. "Robert, please," Avery whispered, turning just enough to keep her voice low. "I'm catching a flight. Can we do this another time?" Robert's laugh carried across the check-in area like nails on a chalkboard. "Do what, Ev? Watch the fall of Avery Reed? Look at you, economy class to Portland. I should have known you'd aim this low. I tried to elevate you, didn't I? But you always preferred the gutter." He draped an arm around Tiffany's shoulders, playing to his audience. "Look, Tiff, this is the woman who threw away everything I gave her. Said she wanted authenticity over comfort. Now she's running to Oregon to stock shelves at some grocery store." Tiffany giggled, a hollow, practiced sound, and gave Avery a look dripping with pity. Oh, bless her heart. Is that all she got in the settlement? That tiny backpack? Heat crawled up Avery's neck. Her lungs tightened. The line of travelers behind her had stopped pretending not to stare. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a public execution of whatever self-respect she had left. And Robert knew exactly how to cut deepest, by confirming her darkest fear that without him, she was worthless. In the exclusive lounge, Ethan Vance's thumb stopped mid-scroll. The sudden intrusion of a loud, arrogant male voice pierced through his focus. Irritated, he pulled one headphone away from his ear. He had zero tolerance for public scenes. He glanced through the tinted glass barrier. The man causing the disturbance was Robert Sterling, a junior partner in the firm he was currently acquiring. Ethan knew Robert by reputation, financially competent, morally bankrupt. But it was the woman who caught his attention. Avery. Her posture was tense, her face pale under the harsh lights, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of dignity fighting against overwhelming humiliation. Ethan watched as Robert pulled out his wallet, extracted a crisp $100 bill, and flicked it dismissively onto the counter near Avery's bag. "Here, Ev," Robert sneered. "Get yourself a decent meal in Portland. Maybe upgrade that ticket. It's disgusting watching you wallow like this." Avery didn't move. Her jaw clenched, her eyes fixed on the offensive bill as if it were a snake coiled to strike. She'd endured his infidelity, his emotional neglect, the soul-crushing divorce. But this public display of contempt was the breaking point. "Robert," Avery said, her voice dangerously low, echoing a strength Robert never knew she possessed. "Keep your money. I don't need your pity, and I definitely don't need your charity." Robert's smile vanished. He hated being challenged, especially in front of Tiffany. "Oh, you think you're high and mighty now? You have nothing, Avery. You're disposable. You know why I agreed to that quick settlement? Because you're utterly irrelevant to my life now. You threw away $1 million life for this." He gestured wildly at the economy line. Ethan Vance slowly stood. He wasn't thinking about business anymore. He was watching the calculated destruction of someone's spirit by a man he instinctively despised. And Robert Sterling had just made a critical error. He'd used the word irrelevant in public. Ethan had built his empire on proving people wrong about what was relevant. He was about to give Robert a devastating lesson. He removed his headphones completely and slipped his phone into his pocket. With quiet, magnetic confidence, Ethan walked out of the lounge, crossing the polished floor toward the commotion, a silent force entering the scene. Robert was still talking, drunk on his own cruelty. "Go ahead, Ev. Fly to Oregon, but remember this moment: you'll be scraping by while I'm closing deals in the Hamptons, and I guarantee you'll never see a single business partner of mine again." Ethan stopped directly behind Robert, his shadow falling over the ex-husband and his fiancée. Robert, too absorbed in his victory, didn't notice. Avery, however, saw the shift. She watched the bystanders' faces change from pity to wide-eyed recognition. Their attention had moved to someone behind Robert, someone who commanded instant respect. Before Robert could deliver his final blow, Ethan spoke. His voice was low, resonant, cutting through the airport noise like a blade. "Mr. Sterling." Robert flinched, spinning around. His smug expression cracked instantly, replaced by panicked recognition. His face went white. He knew that voice. He knew that suit. He knew exactly who was standing behind him. "Ethan, Mr. Vance, I didn't see you there," Robert stammered, his entire body language shrinking from predator to prey. Ethan didn't acknowledge the greeting. His dark eyes moved to the $100 bill on the counter, then back to Robert with clinical disdain. "Is this how you conduct business, Mr. Sterling?" Ethan asked, his tone flat and emotionless, which made it infinitely more terrifying. "No, sir, of course not. This is a private matter." "My ex-wife," Robert rushed to explain, throwing a nervous glance at Avery. "We were just having a small disagreement." Ethan's gaze shifted to Avery. Something unreadable flickered in his expression. Then he turned back to Robert and pulled a black credit card from his wallet, the kind that whispered of limitless wealth. He didn't speak to Robert. He addressed the stunned check-in agent directly. "I believe this woman needs her ticket upgraded," Ethan said calmly. "To my private jet. Destination, Portland. And please return the $100 to Mr. Sterling. He appears to need it more than she does." Robert's jaw dropped. Tiffany looked completely bewildered. Avery stood frozen, reality slamming into her. Ethan Vance, the richest, most private man in their entire social circle, someone who'd never acknowledged her existence at any corporate function, had just intervened in her humiliation. Ethan looked at Robert one final time, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for the ex-husband's ears. "You said she'd never see a business partner of yours again, Robert. That she was irrelevant." He paused, allowing a cold smile to touch his lips. "Allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Ethan Vance, and as of this morning, I became the majority stakeholder in Sterling and Vance Investments. Your future, Mr. Sterling, will now be determined by how relevant she is to me." Robert's face turned ashen. The crowd gasped. Avery stood speechless. The entire game had just changed in a single devastating moment. Ethan's words hung in the charged terminal air, crushing what remained of Robert Sterling's composure. Robert began stammering incoherent protests, a desperate mix of denial and fear. "Ethan, sir, this is a complete misunderstanding. I meant no disrespect to the firm, Ethan cut him off with a dismissive gesture. He turned his full attention to Avery, whose shock was slowly transforming into something resembling cautious hope mixed with disbelief. "Avery Reed," Ethan stated, his voice now purely professional, as if the last 5 minutes had been nothing more than a routine transaction. "I am Ethan Vance. I believe you have an immediate opening in your schedule." Avery, still reeling, managed a shaky nod. I was going to Portland." "Change of plans," Ethan said simply, gesturing with the black card toward the astonished agent. "My jet departs in 20 minutes. You'll be on it. We have a meeting to discuss an immediate partnership opportunity." He didn't ask if she agreed. He stated it as established fact. Then he looked back at Robert, whose face had become a mask of furious, terrified defeat. "Robert, consider this your last display of unprofessionalism. I suggest you pocket that $100. My legal team will contact you regarding a mandatory review of your partnership status." With that, Ethan placed a hand lightly at Avery's back, a gesture that was clearly possessive, not affectionate, guiding her away from the gaping crowd and the ruined Robert Sterling. As they walked toward the private terminal entrance, Avery risked one look back. Robert was leaning against the counter, supported by a confused Tiffany, his expression pure, impotent rage. 15 minutes later, Avery sat in the plush leather cabin of Ethan's private jet. The silence here was luxurious, broken only by the engine's soft hum. She felt absurdly out of place in her faded coat. A flight attendant silently served sparkling water, then disappeared with a discreet bow. Ethan sat across from her, long legs crossed, radiating detached concentration. He didn't look at her for several minutes, instead reviewing a folder from his briefcase, the merger document he'd been reading earlier. The delay was deliberate, giving Avery time to process what had just happened. Finally, he closed the folder and fixed her with an unblinking stare. "Let's be direct, Ms. Reed. I require a service. You require leverage. This is a transaction." Avery gripped her water glass. "A service, Mr. Vance. What exactly did you just buy with a private jet ride?" "Your expertise and your public loyalty," Ethan responded with striking honesty. "You were married to Robert Sterling for 5 years. You worked at his firm. You know his patterns, his weaknesses, his blind spots. Sterling and Vance is now integrated into my operations. Robert Sterling is a liability I intend to neutralize, completely and efficiently. I need someone inside his immediate orbit who's beyond his influence. Someone he'll never suspect." Avery raised an eyebrow, her old analytical mind sparking back to life. "You want me to investigate my ex-husband, to provide the information you need to remove him?" Ethan gave the faintest nod. "Not investigate, Ms. Reed. Audit. I'm offering you the position of Director of Internal Compliance at Vance Acquisitions. Your focus will be reporting directly to me on any ethical, legal, or systemic vulnerabilities Robert created at Sterling and Vance. Your marketing background, your analytical skills, and your personal history with him make you uniquely qualified." "And the compensation?" Avery asked, testing his transactional nature. "Starting salary, $300,000 annually, full benefits, substantial performance bonus upon successful completion of your objectives, with a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement protecting your position indefinitely," Ethan stated. The number silenced her. It was more than 10 times her savings. "Plus, an immediate $50,000 advance to re-establish your life in Seattle. Robert will watch you flourish. He'll see you thriving under my protection, and it will systematically destroy his standing within the firm." The offer was overwhelming, a fantasy solution to a nightmare reality. Revenge wrapped in a six-figure salary. "But there's a condition," Avery said. Knowing someone like Ethan Vance never gave anything without a perfectly calculated cost. Ethan leaned forward, his intensity magnetic. "The market can't know the new power structure at Sterling and Vance is purely professional. Robert is a gossip. He'll try to discredit you immediately. To maintain maximum leverage, he must believe you're not just my employee, but that you're mine, socially, exclusively, publicly. I need a temporary fiancé, Ms. Reed, someone to accompany me to critical social and corporate events. You'll be introduced as the woman who finally made me remember life exists outside of acquisitions. You'll be both my shield and my strategy." Avery stared, breath catching. A fake engagement to Ethan Vance, Seattle's ghost mogul. This wasn't just a job. It was immersion into a world that had once rejected her, armed with a title and a powerful protector. "A fake engagement," she whispered. "Mr. Vance, I just escaped a transactional marriage. I'm not sure I can pretend to do it again." "This is different," Ethan countered, his tone hardening. "This is transparently transactional with clear boundaries. There are no expectations of romance or intimacy. We're two professionals entering a high-stakes corporate strategy to achieve mutual objectives. You gain financial independence and vindication. I gain control of my firm and elimination of a weak link. We'll draft a contract specifying every detail, including a dissolution clause after 1 year or upon Robert's complete removal. Your risk is minimal. Your reward is absolute freedom." He pulled out a pre-printed leather-bound contract, proof of his preparation. "Sign this, Ms. Reed, and your past is erased. Robert Sterling will spend the next year watching you succeed beyond anything he thought possible." Avery looked at the contract, then at the jet's sleek interior, and finally at Ethan, brilliant, cold, and offering her a diamond-encrusted sword. Her old self, the timid wife who'd lost her spark, died in that moment. A new Avery, sharp and fueled by righteous purpose, took a breath and reached for the pen. "Where do I sign, Mr. Vance?" The contract was signed at 30,000 feet, the leather-bound document resting on polished mahogany. Avery Reed was now Ethan Vance's Director of Internal Compliance and, more startlingly, his temporary fiancée. She felt a volatile mix of terror and power. She was playing a role, but the stakes were devastatingly real. After Avery signed, Ethan leaned forward to collect the contract. Their faces came within inches of each other. He paused, his eyes dropping briefly to her mouth. The cabin fell silent, except for the distant engine hum. His breath was warm against her skin as he whispered, "Careful, Avery. Some contracts are harder to break than others." She felt the intensity radiating from him, the subtle scent of expensive cologne drawing her attention. For one heartbeat, she thought he might close the distance between them, but he pulled back abruptly, jaw tight, leaving her pulse racing and her thoughts spinning from what almost happened. Upon landing in Seattle, Ethan's efficiency was breathtaking. Within 48 hours, he'd orchestrated the complete erasure of Avery's past and construction of her new reality. She was installed in a minimalist high-rise apartment overlooking Puget Sound, the $50,000 advance already deposited. Her workspace wasn't at the main Vance Acquisitions office, but in a soundproofed private suite on the executive floor of Ethan's personal tower, a space Robert Sterling could only dream of accessing. Avery spent 3 days in an intensive crash course on Ethan Vance's world. Ava Chen, Ethan's chief of staff, a woman as formidable and precise as Ethan himself, handled the logistical transition. Meanwhile, Avery began her compliance work, methodically examining public records and internal data Ethan provided. She quickly found inconsistencies in vendor contracts at Sterling and Vance, subtle red flags Robert had carelessly scattered throughout the system. Her mind, once stifled by marriage, buzzed with the thrill of discovery. The facade, however, required its own preparation. On the fourth day, Ethan summoned her to his penthouse office. The meeting was strictly professional until he slid a velvet box across his massive desk. "Your costume," Ethan stated flatly. Avery opened the box. Inside lay an engagement ring. It wasn't merely large, it was an architectural statement. A cushion-cut diamond caught the light with devastating brilliance, flanked by two perfect sapphire baguettes. It wasn't designed to say, "I love you." It was designed to declare irreplaceable. "This is," Avery started, searching for adequate words. "Necessary," Ethan finished. "It sends a message of exclusivity and permanence. It closes Robert's chapter definitively. He must believe this is genuine and long-term. We debut tonight. The annual Vance Acquisition Stakeholders Gala. Robert Sterling, as junior partner of a newly acquired firm, will be required to attend." Avery's heart hammered. She was going from cleaning houses to attending a billionaire's gala in 4 days. "I don't have anything appropriate to wear." "Ava has handled your presentation," he replied, already returning to his tablet. "Be ready by 7. Don't be late, and under no circumstances show fear. Tonight, you're the most valuable person in that room." That evening, Avery barely recognized herself in the floor-length mirror. She wore a sophisticated, deep emerald silk gown that made her eyes luminous. Her hair, usually pulled back, fell in soft, elegant waves. The ring on her finger felt like a literal weight of power and responsibility. It didn't belong to her, but tonight it was her armor. At exactly 7, Ethan's black sedan arrived. Ethan, flawless in his tuxedo, opened her door personally. The silence during the drive was intense. "Listen carefully, Avery," Ethan instructed, his voice low and serious. "The objective tonight is simple. Maximum visibility, zero emotion. You'll maintain constant exclusive proximity to me. You'll smile, you'll be gracious, but stay focused on the strategy. Don't engage Robert alone. He'll try to break your composure." "What if he asks about us?" Avery adjusted the ring, which seemed to glow in the dim light. "You respond with a smile that suggests a secret, and you say, 'Some things are better left private, Robert.' You wouldn't understand. That's the complete narrative." Ethan placed his hand over hers, not just holding it, but slowly interlacing their fingers with deliberate, possessive intent. His thumb traced gentle circles on the inside of her wrist, right where her pulse raced visibly. The gesture appeared innocent enough for the driver to ignore, but the pressure of his touch sent warmth spreading through her entire body. He leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. "Tonight everyone will believe you're mine. Remember exactly how that feels." Their faces were mere inches apart. She could feel the warmth of his presence, see the intensity in his dark eyes. Just as her breathing quickened, the car slowed. They'd arrived. He released her hand slowly, his gaze holding hers for one final moment of unspoken understanding. They stepped onto the red carpet, to a glittering spectacle of Seattle's elite. As they emerged together, a ripple of recognition swept through the waiting photographers and reporters. Ethan Vance never brought a date. Ever. His sudden appearance with a stunning unknown woman wearing an impossible ring was the evening's earthquake. Inside, the ballroom was an ocean of diamonds and designer suits. Ethan, true to his word, remained her anchor. He kept his hand either at the small of her back, a clear gesture of possession, or wrapped around her elbow, physically guiding her through the powerful crowd. He introduced her as Avery Reed, the reason I finally remembered life exists beyond quarterly reports. The manufactured story felt strangely intoxicating. Avery was managing well, charming the financiers, gracefully deflecting curious questions, until Robert Sterling finally appeared. Robert, with an agitated Tiffany beside him, looked less confident than he had at the airport. He'd clearly spent recent days in controlled panic. He forced a smile that resembled a grimace and approached, his eyes immediately drawn to the ring like a magnet. "Ethan and Avery," Robert said, voice strained. "I had no idea about this. Congratulations. This seems rather sudden." He couldn't stop staring at the diamond. Its size confirmed his worst nightmares. Tiffany was less subtle. She examined Avery from head to toe, settling on the dress and ring with toxic jealousy. "That gown is stunning, Avery." "Is it vintage?" she asked, clearly hoping to expose a cheap imitation. Avery, remembering Ethan's coaching, maintained a serene, slightly bored expression. "It's bespoke," she replied smoothly. Ethan insisted on something that matched the significance of the evening. Robert tried to recover. "So, Vance, I hear Avery's consulting on internal operations now. A bit surprising, considering her background is marketing, not compliance. She's been out of the corporate world for a while, if you know what I mean." He was planting seeds of professional doubt, trying to reclaim some control. Ethan's expression turned glacial. He placed his hand over Avery's, completely obscuring the ring in an intimate gesture. "Robert, I hired Avery precisely because her skills are exceptional. She possesses a perspective currently proving invaluable to my understanding of your firm's internal controls." The emphasis on "your firm's internal controls" landed like a knife. Robert's eyes flickered with immediate fear. He knew exactly what that implied. Avery was investigating. Ethan continued, voice dropping to that dangerous register Avery now recognized as a warning. "In fact, Avery just reviewed a particular vendor contract today. Quite complex, Robert. Full of fascinating inconsistencies." Robert's composure shattered. He swallowed hard. "Inconsistencies? That's ridiculous. Everything is properly documented." Avery seized her moment. She looked directly at Robert with steady, unwavering confidence. The same woman he'd tried to destroy at the airport, now standing at the apex of his professional world. "You'd be surprised, Robert," she said, her voice light and innocent. "When you know where to look, complexity often hides very clear patterns. But as Ethan said, some things are better left private. You wouldn't understand." She gave him the practiced, knowing smile, one that suggested not only romance with Ethan, but professional dominance over Robert's fate. Robert stood speechless, his face pale with dread. He'd come to network and was leaving, having received a coded threat from his new majority partner, delivered by his supposedly broken ex-wife. Ethan squeezed her hand once, silent approval of her performance. "Now, if you'll excuse us, Robert, Avery and I have a private meeting regarding the merger prospectus. Perhaps we'll review your division's contributions later." He guided her toward the dance floor to complete their public performance. As the music began, he pulled her close, closer than strictly necessary for appearances. One hand settled possessively at the small of her back, where the gown's fabric dipped low. His other hand held hers against his chest, where she could feel his heartbeat. As they moved together, he eliminated any space between them, each step a deliberate display of intimacy. He leaned down, his lips near her ear as he whispered praise. "You were perfect out there. Absolutely perfect." She felt a shiver run through her. His grip tightened in response, pulling her even closer for a moment so she could feel the rapid rhythm of his heart matching her own. Their eyes met, faces hovering breath-close as the music swelled, but the song ended. He released her slowly, both breathing harder than the simple dance required. As they left the floor, Avery glanced back to see Tiffany desperately whispering to a defeated Robert, his body language signaling immediate retreat. Avery understood the truth. This hadn't been a social event. It had been a strategic execution, and she'd been holding the weapon. The fear was gone. The thrill of calculated justice had taken its place. She wasn't running anymore. She was hunting. Over the next 2 months, Avery's transformation became complete. She lived a dual existence, meticulous compliance director by day, flawless corporate partner by night. During business hours, she excavated Sterling and Vance's financial records, discovering a continuous pattern of suspicious wire transfers routed through obscure shell corporations. Textbook embezzlement Robert had been operating for personal gain. During evenings, she perfected the art of being Ethan Vance's partner, accompanying him to charity auctions, intimate dinners with investors, and strategic meetings. The performance was exhausting, but watching Robert's professional life unravel was deeply satisfying. Robert, under relentless pressure from Ethan's demands for complete transparency and Avery's systematic auditing, was deteriorating. He made mistakes. He became erratic, suspecting everyone except the person actually documenting his crimes, his ex-wife. He frequently called Avery under the pretense of seeking professional advice, really fishing for information about Ethan's intentions. Avery handled him with icy professionalism, feeding him calculated misinformation that only deepened his paranoia. Despite their arrangement's transactional foundation, an unexpected partnership developed between Avery and Ethan. During long hours in her executive office, they rarely discussed their fabricated romance. Instead, they debated data integrity, market ethics, and the responsibilities of corporate power. Avery saw the brilliance in Ethan, the ethical core hidden beneath his ruthless exterior. He wasn't cruel. He simply refused to tolerate deception or incompetence. One Friday afternoon, Avery presented her complete findings. She laid a comprehensive report on Ethan's desk, detailing Robert's shell company, Trident Solutions LLC, and the specific contracts he'd manipulated to siphon millions from the firm over 2 years. "It's definitive, Ethan," Avery said with quiet confidence. "I have dates, transaction IDs, authorization trails." He used compromised credentials from low-level staff accounts to approve the transfers. "This is systematic fraud, not accounting errors." Ethan studied the report, his expression carefully neutral. He was clearly satisfied, though he didn't show it. "Excellent work, Avery. This is conclusive. We have sufficient evidence not only to terminate him, but to ensure appropriate legal consequences." He looked up, locking eyes with her. "Robert Sterling's chapter closes next week. Our contractual agreement terminates upon his removal. You'll receive your final performance bonus. And your freedom." Avery felt an unexpected pang that wasn't relief. She'd spent 2 months building a life defined by this partnership, this proximity to brilliance and purpose. Returning to just being Avery Reed felt strangely hollow. "What about the engagement?" she asked, quickly clarifying. "How do we dissolve it publicly without damaging your reputation? The business community expects an announcement soon." Ethan stood and walked to his floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the rain-swept city. "I've already prepared the narrative. A mutual, amicable separation. The stated reason, my inability to balance professional demands with personal commitment. Predictable and clean." Avery nodded, maintaining professional composure even as unexpected vulnerability surfaced. She looked at the Trident Solutions folder, then back at Ethan, who seemed distant, already mentally moving to his next acquisition. "Ethan," she began softly, "why did you really do this? You could have hired the best forensic team anywhere. You didn't need the fake engagement. You didn't need me, specifically." Ethan remained facing the window for a long moment. When he finally turned, his usual reserve showed a small, almost imperceptible crack. "I told you at the airport." "I despise the word irrelevant," Ethan admitted, his gaze intense. "And I despise arrogance built on others' humiliation. Robert needed to be dismantled by the person he tried to destroy. That was my primary motivation. He hesitated, then stepped closer. But honestly, I recognize something else in you, Avery. Something personal. Ethan walked to a shelf behind his desk. There, facing partially away, was a simple silver-framed photograph, the only personal item in his vast, sterile office. He picked it up and handed it to her. The photo showed a woman with dark hair and intelligent eyes, not identical to Avery, but with a similar presence, a similar spark of determination. "This was Claire Vance," Ethan said, his voice losing all professional polish. "My wife. She was brilliant, determined, and the operational heart of Vance Acquisitions before I acquired Sterling and Vance. She was also one of the finest forensic auditors I've ever known. She could spot irregularities others missed entirely." Avery studied the photograph, then looked at Ethan. The armor he wore wasn't just ambition. It was constructed from profound, unresolved grief. "Claire died 3 years ago in an accident," Ethan continued, gripping his desk's edge. "Robert Sterling was hired 6 months later to fill a strategic gap, a gap I wasn't ready to acknowledge existed. The firm's financial irregularities began precisely 6 weeks after he gained control of vendor operations. I knew something was wrong, but internal teams couldn't find evidence. They were looking for obvious fraud. They couldn't see the truth hidden in systematic patterns." He met Avery's eyes directly, allowing vulnerability to show. "When I saw you at that airport, Avery, I didn't just see Robert's ex-wife. I saw the same analytical fire, the same quiet determination Claire possessed. I saw someone Robert underestimated because he only recognizes weakness. And I needed someone who could see the truth in numbers that Robert had buried. I needed to know if I could trust my instincts again." Avery felt profound understanding wash over her. This transaction was never purely business. It was about justice and healing for both of them. Ethan didn't need a replacement wife. He needed a professional partner who could restore his faith in the firm's integrity and in his own judgment. "That first day you walked into this office and immediately questioned my data sources," Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. "You brought clarity I hadn't felt since Claire. You didn't just execute tasks, you understood why they mattered. You were the auditor I needed, Avery. And this arrangement, it was perfect strategic cover, but it became the only honest professional partnership I've had since I lost her." He was telling her, in his carefully controlled way, that she'd become essential, both professionally and personally. Their partnership, born from revenge, had transformed into something real. Ethan reached out, his hand gently tracing the line of her jaw. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned slightly into his touch. That subtle response was all the permission he needed. His hand slid to the back of her neck, fingers threading gently through her hair as he finally closed the distance between them. The kiss began slowly, careful, almost reverent, but when her lips parted on a soft intake of breath, he deepened it, pouring months of restrained emotion into the connection. He guided her back gently until she was against the desk's edge, his hands moving to her waist, steadying her. She reached up instinctively, fingers gripping his shoulders, drawing him closer. One of his hands spread across her lower back, pulling her toward him as the kiss intensified, years of his isolation meeting her own need to feel valued and wanted. When they finally separated, foreheads resting together, both were breathing unsteadily. "So, what happens now?" Avery whispered, the question no longer about contracts or strategy, but about the unexpected future standing directly in front of her. Ethan stepped back to his desk, picked up the report, and turned to the final page, the dissolution clause. He didn't sign it. Instead, he deliberately tore the page from the binder and let it fall to the floor. "The contract is void, Avery." Ethan stated, his voice firm and decisive. The initial terms are fulfilled. Robert will be removed. But this firm's compliance division needs a permanent director with partnership track. And my life needs a partner who isn't a memory from the past, but the reality of the future I'm building. The performance ends now. He moved closer, eliminating the distance between them. Avery Reed, the woman who stood up to humiliation at that airport and exposed multi-million-dollar fraud in my firm. I want you to stay, not as a consultant, not as a temporary arrangement, as Director of Internal Audit with full partnership track and complete autonomy. And I want you as the woman I can finally trust to stand beside me, not for revenge, for whatever future we choose to build together. The question was no longer whether she'd gain her freedom, but what she would choose to do with the unexpected life standing right in front of her. Avery stared at Ethan, the torn contract page lying abandoned on the carpet between them. His offer wasn't a business proposal, it was a confession of need, stripped of all corporate pretense. The office, which had always felt cold and sterile, now hummed with quiet, undeniable connection. The performance ends now, Avery repeated softly, her gaze dropping to the diamond on her finger. It had been the symbol of their strategic warfare, the armor she'd worn to survive. Slowly, deliberately, she slipped the massive engagement ring from her finger. The metal felt warm against her skin. "This was never truly mine, Ethan," she said, placing the ring gently on the edge of his desk. It was powerful theater, and it served its purpose perfectly, but the real value wasn't in this ring or the salary. It was in proving to Robert, and more importantly to myself, that I was always relevant, that my worth was never defined by him. Ethan watched her carefully, his expression expectant. He didn't touch the ring. "Robert's removal is scheduled for tomorrow's board meeting," Avery continued, her voice regaining professional strength. "He's walking into a trap of his own construction. I'll present the audit findings personally. He needs to see that the woman he called disposable is the one signing his termination papers. That's the true end of our performance." "And after that, Avery?" Ethan prompted quietly. A genuine smile, one that hadn't been possible since before her marriage, finally touched Avery's lips. She met his gaze directly. Years of manufactured self-doubt finally burned away completely. "After that, I accept the position of Director of Internal Audit," she stated clearly. "Full autonomy, partnership track, complete control over the compliance team. We need to dismantle the culture of deception Robert helped create. That's my professional answer." Ethan allowed a rare, genuine smile to spread across his face. "Done. The contract will be drafted immediately with full partnership provisions." "And my personal answer," Avery added, stepping closer until only the desk separated them, "is that I'm not accepting a replacement for your past either. I'm accepting a future with someone who values clarity, who respects integrity, and who gave me the tools to fight for my own relevance. But no more secrets, Ethan. No more strategies. We start completely clean as equals." Ethan reached across the desk, taking her hand, not the one that had held the pen, but the one that had just removed the ring. He covered it with his own, the warmth grounding. "As equals, Avery, always." The board meeting the following day was a masterpiece of corporate precision. Robert Sterling walked in confidently, expecting minor criticism for trivial discrepancies. He was catastrophically unprepared for the sight of Avery Reed seated at the head of the table, not as Ethan Vance's decorative partner, but as lead auditor, presenting a 30-page indictment of his 2-year embezzlement operation. Avery was clinical, concise, and devastating. She presented the Trident Solutions Shell Corporation, the compromised credentials, the wire transfers, all cross-referenced with Robert's personal expenditures that matched the stolen amounts almost perfectly. Robert's composure collapsed entirely into frantic, loud denial. This is a setup. This is revenge. Ethan, you can't trust her. She's desperate. She had nothing. She's the woman you found at an economy check-in counter. She's irrelevant. Ethan, who'd remained silent until that precise moment, leaned forward. His voice was calm, slicing through Robert's hysteria. Mr. Sterling, Avery is relevant because she uncovered the systematic fraud you buried. Your partnership is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you from the premises. And yes, she is the woman I met at that check-in counter. But she didn't walk out of defeat. She walked out of a prison of your creation. And she came here to deliver justice. As Robert was escorted out, defeated and exposed, he shot one last venomous glance at Avery. She met his eyes with quiet, profound indifference. His hatred no longer held any power over her whatsoever. Weeks passed. Avery settled fully into her new position. The internal audit team was restructured, transparent, and highly effective. The firm operated more ethically, and the atmosphere on the executive floor had visibly improved. She and Ethan built a genuine routine. Late evenings reviewing complex cases, quiet conversations over morning coffee, and weekends spent in authentic, low-key, shared moments discussing everything except business. One crisp Saturday morning, they stood on the balcony of her apartment, watching ferries cross the Sound. Avery sipped coffee, wearing comfortable jeans, no costume, no performance, no facade. Ethan turned to her, pulling a small box from his pocket. It wasn't velvet or theatrical. It was simple, polished wood. The first ring was a weapon, Ethan said, his voice completely earnest. This one is a promise. No conditions, no performance clauses, no contracts, just a choice. Avery opened the box. Inside lay a simple, elegant platinum band, modest by Vance standards, yet infinitely more valuable than the diamond weapon had been. You told me once that I gave you the tools to fight for your own relevance, Ethan said quietly. But you were always relevant, Avery. I just helped you remember. Now I'm asking, will you let someone who values exactly who you are be part of your life permanently? As your partner, your equal, your family? If you're ready. Tears, not of grief or pain, but of absolute joy, finally streamed down Avery's face. She didn't hesitate. I'm ready, Ethan. Completely ready. She took the ring from the box. It was the first truly right choice she'd made for herself in years. The ring, now on her finger, wasn't a shield of corporate warfare, but a symbol of freedom earned and love unexpectedly discovered. She accepted it, and he pulled her close, both hands gently at her waist. This time there were no cameras, no contract, no audience watching, just the two of them. He kissed her the way someone does when they've finally allowed themselves to feel again, deeply, completely, his hands moving from her waist to cradle her face, as if she were impossibly precious. She rose on her toes to meet him fully, her arms wrapping around his neck, and he responded by pulling her closer still, eliminating every bit of space between them. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against hers, voice rough with emotion. No more pretending, Avery. You're mine, and I'm yours. Completely. And so it was in Avery Reed's story. A moment of devastating public humiliation became the unexpected catalyst for true power, genuine freedom, and real love. Avery Reed, the woman Robert Sterling called irrelevant, proved to be the most important person in Ethan Vance's life, exposing a corporate criminal and building an empire founded on integrity. If Avery and Ethan's journey from strategic partnership to genuine love moved you, please like this story to support tales of earned justice. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. We have even more powerful stories of revenge and romance coming soon. And tell us in the comments, what single word would you use to describe Robert Sterling's fate? We love reading your insights. Don't miss what's next.